So where I left off, I did another recording. I forgot to record, so I'm kind of going backwards here. This is where we were. So we have the layout here with the 2 bits, and when we shrink it, we didn't like the layout there. And I was saying that we get a media response, but I didn't have it in the template anymore, so I need to go back and look at the other one. But before we do that, I wanted to take care of a different problem where we have our 12 columns divided between 4 and 8, but I want this whole thing to be narrower. So we need to actually adjust our column grid. So this is what I had before in the last recording, the row, which starts and stops here with a division that's 4 wide and then 8 wide to make our 12. But we actually need to nest that in another row. So here we have the row opening and closing, and within that we have a division that we tell to be just 8 wide. And I don't know if we could add the, let's try it this way first. So I'm going to take that and add it to the class here on the row, because this will be simpler if I just have to do this one. So I'm going to uncomment that first division. And see if we can do it with just one division. Oops, one division here. Yes, that worked fine. That's simpler. Okay, so now the whole thing is narrower in that out of my 12 here, I'm using just 8. See if I can get that to highlight the 8. That's not going to highlight it unless I do the HTML line. Okay, there it is. So there's my 8 wide out of 12. So it's isolating it in that tighter area. And it's auto-centering it with the MX Auto. Okay, so that helps me out. There's some other weird problems going on here, but don't worry about that. So out of that 8, it's treating that new row as a whole nother thing of 12. So we start with 8 out of 12, and then our nested row, let's clean this up now that we don't need that. Our nested row starts again at that count of 12 with 4 and 8. Okay? So let's verify that that's still working. Okay. Our image, as we left it, is a fixed size, and when our screen gets too small, it starts to overlap, which is a little bit of a problem. So we need to change, how that image is reading in. And we had done that in the style sheet. Here it is. So we had a width of 14 rem and height of 14 rem. If we change it to 14 rem to just 100%, as I have noted there, it's going to fill its column side to side. And in that case, we don't need to note the height. So I'll extend the comment to that point. So now it's going to scale to fill its available area, so we won't have these two overlapping. So when we look at those blocks, you can see that they remain side by side and just keep scaling for our content. So it's never wider than the 8 here, and then each of these starts over with a proportion of, imagining this whole thing of 8 is a 12 column grid, so 4 out of that for the image and 8 out of that for the text. So that's the best way to get that to scale responsively, and the image just gets smaller. And the nice thing about that is when it gets small enough, then it just grows to fill the space. So in this case it gets quite big, which depending on the image that could be a good thing. Okay, so that part is working. So what we don't have working is when it scales down, everything just kind of goes crazy, right? So we need to use those @media rules to get that working the way we want. So I had to go back to the template to get an example of that, because I had deleted the place where it was using it, which would be our timeline. So when we click on those, you can see that these @media rules pop up. So that particular item is looking the way it does now because our screen is at least 768 wide. It's larger than that now. So this idea of the text align right is working. If we grow the screen, then past 760, no, sorry, less than 768, then that media rule is going to disappear. There we go. So that disappears, and now it's text align left. If we go back to where it appears, then we have text align right. So the idea is that we copy that thing when it appears and find the right place to put it. So when we copy these @media rules out of Google Developer, it doesn't give us the brackets for the media rule, it just gives us the curly brackets for the CSS rule that's embedded inside of it. So when we copy that over, we need to be careful about how we do that. So I already have it copied here. Let me just copy it right above. So we, oops, didn't copy actually. Copy and paste. So you can see here we have the curly bracket for this thing, but we technically need a curly bracket around the whole thing here, and this shorter rule is nested inside of it. Okay, so that's what I have copied down here. Just to explain kind of, so what I did was I copied the rule and then changed what was inside of it. Okay, that's how I get to what we have here. Just turn off my comments. So this new thing that I put inside there, we're talking about the footer top, the paragraph within it. So by default we want it to be left justified, but when it's less than 991 wide, we're going to have it do this instead. So, oh, is this right? We want it to be centered. And I'm going to comment out this because I'm not ready to show you that yet. So that's the first thing we're trying to do, is take, when it was big, we liked how it was with left justified, but when it's shorter, we want it to be center line. So let's see if this is working now. Let's back to our page. And we're here at the smaller size. That's left justified. It's still left justified. Where did I mess that up? Maybe it's the opposite. I was confused because that was left. Center justified. Left justified when it gets bigger. Okay. So that's the right order. So our one at the bottom is what triggers at the scale below 991, and then when it reaches at least 991, it goes to our larger size. That's what that upper one means. Okay, and I was a little bit confused when I was doing that, so I added the text uppercase so I could see it work. And I don't really need that. So here's our smaller size with this center justification, and the larger size without it, with just, or sorry, left, center. Okay, this whole image thing isn't fitting the background when we are in the smaller screen, just the larger one. So let's change how that smaller screen was sized. So the small screen, both of them, anytime we have the section image, we define the height. So it's not letting it get bigger based on the content. So instead of having the height tied to the generic class, I took it out of here and put it specifically just on the team top one where I needed the height because there wasn't any content in the team top to hold it open. So here's the team top, so I had to force the 300 to get it to be that size, and I did that on the class, which I'd reused for this one, but that means that it forced this one to be only that height and not expand as we needed. So by changing it to the ID that was just the team top and not the one down here, then we get this one stays at 300 and this one will grow as it needs to for the content. So when that content gets taller, it's now going to fit all of the content there. So the next thing we need to do is to get a better spacing between this and control the size of this so it doesn't get too huge. So we can do that with our at media thing. So let's go back. So when it's 991, that footer top P, that's one thing we have. We do want to change the margin of it. So this is the one that triggers when it's small. So when it's small, we want a margin there. Okay, so now we have that margin. And when we go to the big version, it still has that margin. So we need to say, okay, when it gets to the bigger size, because this is the default, so we need to counteract whatever we do in the default when it's larger and tell it to have the opposite of that, the 0 REMs when it's larger. So that keeps it up at the top when it's larger and allows it to have that margin at the top when it's smaller. So let's see if we can get a size limit on this. So the default would be maybe, I don't know, maybe the 14 rem on the default and the 100% on the other one. So our default is this one. So that's the footer top P lower image. So we're going to need to move this because we're going to put in the exception here. So the default will be 100%. No, we'll do it the opposite. Well, the default will be the 14 rem. I don't know that we need to describe. Let's do that. See what happens. And the larger one will be the 100%. Let's see if that works and doesn't kill our image. Okay, so the default is 14 rems, and the larger one will be 100%. That works. So the image is automatically scaling the height off of the width. So if we decide what the width is going to be, so as the largest that's ever going to get is going to be that 14 rems. And you'll see it actually drop down in size for a minute when we're scaling to fill its whole block. And then it's going to get bigger again as that width of the block gets bigger. Alright, hopefully that that makes sense, the things that we did, and that keeps us responsive. So using the @media rule lets us decide different situations, different alignments, based on the size of what we're doing. And of course I should use a different image other than this guy here. Maybe go back and steal the team image from someone else here. Just 2. That's pretty easy change. Image above footer. The footer. This is what I'm doing. So just person number 2. There we go. A little less confusing now. So that you could use this for a variety of things. Just keeping in mind those 2 layout ideas, that we have the larger grid and then the smaller grid inside of it, and then changing it at the right breakpoint, and changing the scaling method for the image at the smaller breakpoint, and the alignment justification for the text at the smaller breakpoint as well.